I'm Roberta Chadis, and you're watching Get Your Voice Out There. This show is dedicated to people in the community who want to speak about their passion and have an opportunity to reach out and express what they're doing so that we all know what a difference they're making in the world. And today, I'm very, very lucky to have two people with me, and we're going to talk about diabetes and health. And I'd like to introduce and welcome Callie Roberts. Callie, so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having us.
I'm delighted. And Diane DeGuzman Pyle.
Hi.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Getting right into the show, my first question is, how did you meet each other? And why don't we start with you, Callie?
Well, I went to Hippocrates Health Institute 2 years ago. My brother asked me to go because he thought it would be good for diabetes, and I went. And then I went a second time about in June, actually, and I met Diane there. And Diane was doing the health educator program. I was doing the life transformation course.
Excellent. And where is that Hippocrates located?
It's in West Palm Beach.
A nice place to have to go.
Yes.
In one way, to get health help. So that's excellent. That's excellent. And I know the same experience was from you, Diane, but how did that meeting happen?
Well, I just love hearing everyone's stories about why they're at Hippocrates, and I'm very inspired by why people go. And so I met Callie. I just met you around during the sessions that we had and at lunch. They have a big lunch in the Wigmore Hall, and everyone just sits at tables and chats. So it's a great place.
It is.
Yeah.
I've actually been there myself, and I know the experience was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah.
Even the outside area where you walk around, we had beautiful statues and sculpture, and it was a very, very calming experience. And what I want to do now is just focus on you, Callie, for a minute or two, and really ask the big question: when was it that you actually discovered that you had diabetes, and how did that affect your life?
It's a great question. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and in 1998 I had diabetes. So I was 33 years old, and I was a copier sales rep in Virginia Beach, and I was driven. And I had classic symptoms of losing weight, frequent urination, incredible thirst, and extreme fatigue. And so I went to the Virginia Beach Hospital, and they said, "Oh, you're type 2." And they put me on glucophage. And I remember going to support group, and it was mostly people over 65. And they said, "One of you is definitely not type 2. So, I said, well, that's probably me, because I went from 130 pounds down to 112 pounds in 2 months. And my A1C at that time was 14 when they tested it, which is quite high. The normal A1C is between 4 and 6.
Can you explain some of those terms?
Sure. The A1C is the measure of your hemoglobin, your blood, for 3 months. And people get tested to see where they should be. And normal would be between 4 and 6, 6 and 7 for a pumper or someone with diabetes. Between 6 and 7 would be better control. Over 7 is a little bit not in control, and they like you to be not over 8. So it varies, and it can vary month to month, and it varies on where you are in your diabetes management.
So after 33 years of not having any issues at all, you found yourself with diabetes.
Oh yeah, it was quite frightening. I was very tired, and I didn't know what to do. And when I got back to New England, they brought me to Leahy, and Jocelyn Clinic had a little outlet there at the time. I remember seeing my doctor, Dr. Bashoff, and she said, "I'm not going to talk to you about this today, and but you can come back in a couple of days, we'll talk." And she put me on an insulin regime, and after 24 hours, I felt great. And then I went to see my team, which most people with diabetes have, which is an endocrinologist, a dietitian, a diabetes educator, and they teach you a little bit how to manage your diabetes. They teach you how to carbo count, how to know about your sensitivity factor, how much insulin to give, carbo to carb ratio. And so that was kind of overwhelming at the time. I can remember saying to the doctor, what am I going to do now? Is this a survival skill? What's going to, she goes, you can live a long, healthy life as long as you have good management. And that's true. I'm not going to tell you it was always like that.
Not that.
It's
Yeah,
not
absolutely keep that a secret for sure. You look great.
for today, I do, yeah. And, you know, it's been a great ride. And I went to Hippocrates based on my brother being the interim director. And he said, you really need to come here. Wake up, Callie. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, get off caffeine, you know, stop the diet drinks, and try Hippocrates and learn what the transformation course is all about. And so I went for a week not believing him and thinking, what is this? And so the first week I got into it. They teach you mind, you know, they teach you about how you think, how you eat and exercise, and how to treat yourself well. A lot of people with chronic diseases go to Hippocrates, not just people with diabetes. And I went there and I decided to stay the 3 weeks. And it's based on a raw food diet, the Life Transformation course. That doesn't mean you always have to be raw. It's based on a plant-based diet. And so you start off with green drinks, and you start off with wheatgrass shots, and you learn about Anne Wigmore and how she cured herself from colon cancer. And a lot of people, after 21 days, people with diabetes come off their metformin, and they learn to control with better eating habits. And so the first round, I went from 30 units a day down to 6 units a day in terms of my diabetes management, which is great. Will I manage that all the time when I go back to my lifestyle? Well, you know, time will tell. And going back to the standard American diet didn't always prove to work best for me. And that's why I went back again in June. And so I went this past June, and again, the same thing happened. I went from 30 units a day down to about 6 to 10 units a day. And incorporating the green juices, the wheatgrass, the plant-based diet based on a lot of veggies and nut-based foods. And they also work on your thought process in terms of not repeating bad habits and patterns, and taking advantage of being in the outdoors and sort of slowing down. And because
and what I'm hearing from you is the amount of discipline that it really takes to take care of yourself. It's very easy to get off the program in order to keep yourself healthy. So I'm wondering, how did your family react to this situation? Now, you imagine you were on your own, but still there were family events. You know, what do we do for Callie when she comes over for the holidays?
It's a good question. I practice. I have to practice on a daily, every day, and people like Diane are mentors, and my family. My brother practices the diet, and he and his wife live the lifestyle. My other brothers and sister-in-laws think, well, you know, let's send the Omaha steak truck to Hippocrates because we don't really think it works, when in fact it does. But and I say that because that's how a lot of people think. They think, how can I live the lifestyle of a plant-based diet versus the standard American diet, which includes ice cream and pizzas and things like that? And guess what? I love pizza and ice cream, and I say that because I know how much it affects my diabetes. I know how much insulin I have to take for that type of foods. But I have to take my time, and I have to find my tribe, so to speak, where I have to talk with someone like Diane to say, you know, well, what did you do to prepare each day, or, you know, what for your meals and things like that, which I'm really not so good at. And I think that people in diabetes need to take their time and prepare for their meals, and that would be something I would encourage most of us to do, because it's.
And this is a good opportunity to take the focus off of you, Callie, for a minute, give you a break, and hear a little bit from Diane about that wonderful Hippocrates Health Institute. I'm sure our audience would love to hear about that and your experience there. So thank you.
Okay. So I learned about raw foods and was trying to incorporate that into my lifestyle. And around the same time, my mother had a stroke. So I called her and I said, you know, we should go to Hippocrates. She said, sure. So we went down, and it was unbelievable. We were only there for a week, but the first day she was kind of wobbly and in a wheelchair. And by the end of the week,
What type of stroke did your mother have?
it was a mild stroke. And she's fine now.
That's great.
But the life transformation program gave her the confidence to overcome her symptoms. And then when she got home, she had all these things that she could do to heal herself. So it was just really wonderful. And then I loved it because I got to hear everyone's stories, and I learned all these things that I could do to maintain my own health, because I did not have the best lifestyle. I worked too much. I was always worrying about my kids, and I grew up in Memphis, so I crave fried chicken and potatoes and stuff like that. That's what I think about when I had a wonderful childhood there, and so when I think happy thoughts, that's potato salad and fried chicken. So so when I got home too, I did the same thing. I got the juicer and started juicing my wheatgrass, and then we went back again last February, and I learned more about the health educator program. So I went back and I met Callie down there, and then I stayed for the whole 9 weeks. And in the health educator program, they teach you all the nuances of what goes on at Hippocrates and how they help people take charge of their health. And you kind of get on a schedule. You have your lemon water in the morning with cayenne pepper. Then around 10 o'clock, you have your first green juice. Then at lunchtime, you have a big plate of sprouts, different kinds of sprouts, and then a couple of raw living food cuisine dishes. So you have this great big lunch. And then around 4 o'clock, another green juice. And then dinner between 6 and 7. And that's staggered so that on Wednesdays, it's a fasting day. That gives your body time to digest. And there's some cold soup that they serve on Wednesday evenings. And then fruit is served on Thursdays and Sundays.
So fruit is only 1 day or 2 days
Yeah.
during the week? And fruit is an interesting subject because having a little diabetes in my family, we have many discussions about which fruits have the least sugar in it and which fruits are better. So would you like to talk about fruit?
Well, I was asked there not to do fruit at all. They tell people with chronic illness not to do fruit because of the sugar content. The only time you can have fruit at Hippocrates is on Fridays, for me, not for other candidates, is when it's ice cream day, and that's made of pine nuts or walnuts or banana, and they said, none for you, you can stick to the walnuts and pine nuts. So it's different for a type 1 diabetic, and probably they tell type 2s not to as well.
So what fruits can you eat?
They suggest I don't eat fruits for 2 years. But they suggest it, and that's not that I don't always follow the suggestions. And of course, if you have a low as a type 1, you need to have dates, versus which will bring your sugars back up. What happens with a type 1 when you follow that diet? You should probably consult with a doctor first before you try this diet if you're type 1, because as you're there, your need for insulin decreases. And I had mentioned that when I went from 30 units a day down to 6 units. And so you're slowly going down in your insulin requirements. So I would have lows because I'd have to back my basal rate. And basal rate is your background insulin in your insulin pump. And I'd have to slowly cut back. I started at maybe 0.6 to 0.8, and I would get down to 0.425. And most of the insulin that was in my pump was my background insulin. Now it's tricky business because Jocelyn will tell you, the Jocelyn Clinic is in Boston, they'll tell you to, well, there is no cure, so to speak, for type 1 diabetes. You can manage it, and some people say, oh, you can come off insulin completely when you follow the raw food diet. I've heard that out 6 months, but I haven't seen it out a year. So, and I'm not here to say whether it's true or not true. I have heard that some people have gotten down to maybe what I've done, 4 to 6 units, and I've seen it in some videos. But you can have the reverse effect, is that if you don't stay on the diet and go back to standard American diet, which we can fall off track, and they'll tell you, an educator will tell you, just make these baby steps as you try to learn the diet, because you know, to go from Diet Coke and coffee and pizza and ice cream to green juices and lemon water and wheatgrass,
It's a shock to the system.
it's great shock.
Yeah.
But the thing is what happened to me in my experience and is that I went to a nutritionist who teaches the standard American diet back here to try to stay on it. And when I started incorporating carbohydrates again into my body and the diet that she would say, oh, yogurt and some nuts and some fruits, I had to give myself insulin. I was having extreme highs in my blood sugar, and my doctor said, you're having resistance, insulin resistance. So you need to always have 100 carbohydrates on board when you're following a sort of plant-based diet. So my suggestion would be, or probably what Diane would recommend, is like try to keep to sweet potatoes or to plant-based things that will offer 100 carbs per day, so that you don't have those extreme highs when you fall off the wagon, so to speak.
Lots of challenges
Yeah.
in this particular health issue. I want to get back to Diane just for a moment, and I wonder what other things that Hippocrates helps people with. I think that would be interesting to hear for the audience as well.
Okay. Well, the mind-body-spirit connection is very important. So there's meditation, Tai Chi, yoga. We did some sound healing, which was fun.
Sound healing?
Yeah. There's a man, what's his name, that plays the didgeridoo at Hippocrates. So you lay on the floor and he'll play the didgeridoo, and the vibrations, you know, are very healing through your body. And so they have all kinds of therapies there. It's really great.
I had a great therapy session with Anthony, and I don't know Anthony's last name, but he did some rapid eye movement, and what I experienced was that after him doing a tape and having me calm and count backwards and then say, you know, a word, and I would open my eyes. After doing the rapid eye movement session, I went and did some yoga, and I never do yoga. I mean, I'm athletic, but I can't stretch. I'm not real flexible. You do get flexible because you're relaxed. What I found is that when I did the yoga in the yurt was that when I did some stretches, I had, and you're thinking and your eyes are closed, I had flashbacks, and and things were released in terms of pain in my hips when I was completely relaxed. So I thought that was interesting, releasing of your emotions. And so I think it's an interesting concept to mind, body, and spirit. And we had lunch recently, and we were talking about everything we know is different than what we thought because of learning so much in terms of growing sprouts and wheatgrass and how you feel and the energy level. So
it's definitely whatever words you use in your head even can affect your health. If you're telling yourself you're tired all the time, you'll be tired. But if you start changing that and use your mind over the body, I definitely agree with all of that. So I'm very pleased to hear what you're saying, and I hope that that will also help our audience, if they're listening carefully, to help others. And that's another question I'd like to ask, because knowing a lot of people who have diabetes, it seems to be a huge amount of numbers. What can we, as people who don't have diabetes, what can we do to help those people? And how can they help themselves? Maybe I'll start with Diane on how can people help themselves and help others?
Well, the Hippocrates lifestyle fits any chronic illness. So I maintain it as a way of encouraging my mother and my other family members, because there's a lot of chronic disease in my family. And also I want to be an example to my kids and my granddaughter on how to eat healthy. So I try not to evangelize too much. I just try to calmly be an example. And then also there's a lot to it. There's a lot of planning involved. There's a lot of food preparation. You have to kind of think ahead, and it changes the way you like grocery shop, for example. You don't usually go to the grocery store one day a week and buy a bunch of food, and then you've got it for the week. You kind of have to, you need to buy fresh food a couple times a week. So I think just maintaining the lifestyle and doing the best you can to eat as healthy as you possibly can, I think is the way. It's the way to go.
Advice. Well, setting an example
Yeah.
is better than telling people what to do, I'm sure.
Right.
So that's great. And how about you, Callie?
I went to the American Diabetes Convention this past weekend out in Marlborough and for New England, and it was staggering the statistics that they give. By 2030, 1 in 3 will be diabetic, and they were talking worldwide. And everything they said, I'm conflicted by Hippocrates and diabetes because the diet works, but I also wear science. I wear a pump and I have sensor technology that help me to manage it, but I know the diet works very well and then keeps me minimized. When I was at this conference, they talked about exactly what Brian Clements talked about. They said, we are so affected by the last 200 years of the Industrial Revolution, how we've changed. We went from farmers and now we've moved closer to the city, and we've moved towards processed foods, and we talk about GMOs, and people are starting to get diabetes, particularly type 2. That seems to be the largest number, but actually type 1s are growing at an enormous rate too, and they can't explain why, or maybe they have some statistics why. It used to be when I was diagnosed that it was 10% of us were type 1s and the remainder were type 2s, but now the number is growing, and they say like 1 in 3. And I think it really links back to processed foods and, you know, the supersize me. When our parents were growing up, we had cups that were demi-tasks, and we'd have a cup of coffee. They'd have a cup of coffee or tea. And my cups, are 32 ounces of diet sodas or coffee or whatever, and that's just a start. And you know, when we're trying to diet, we do the lean cuisines in a processed box, or when we go out and have a career, we're coming back and we're doing the Stouffer's boxes, or we're picking up a prepared meal at our local market, like a Crosby's or a Henry's, and the portions are still a little bit large. And do we really need that much in terms of, unless we're doing a lot of exercise? So our portion controls are a little bit crazy, and there are a lot of movies out there right now trying to educate people to get back to basics and try to get our insulin and our obesity in control. Mark Hyman calls it diabesity, if you've ever heard of Mark Hyman. Mark Hyman wrote the book on the blood sugar solution. And you know, there is truth in it, because they're writing these books, The Life Force, and they're writing the book Sweet Disease, and they're writing the books The Blood Sugar Solution, and small baby steps to show that we need to make a change. And you know, the hard change is how to grow your wheatgrass and how to grow your sprouts, and it doesn't take a lot of time to soak your seeds and then watch them sprout. I mean, you know, I'd like to be doing it, but so I go get a shot of wheatgrass at my local places, and maybe some more places will pop up over time.
Well, you're certainly inspiring me to get back into it. We had a lot of discussion about wheatgrass, and it's even good for dogs.
My cat, I went to the vet. I went to the vet, and the vet told me my cat was not going to live. I had a little Siamese cat that was my mother's, and I grew wheatgrass, and the cat's been eating the wheatgrass, and the cat is doing just fine.
There's nothing bad in wheatgrass. As a matter of fact, I just read up on it. So wheatgrass, I'm going to just definitely suggest as the host, that is a really good start.
Well, when they're sick, they go outside and eat grass.
That's right.
So, and we've seen people, I know you've probably seen it more, that they take the pulp from wheatgrass and they put it on their cuts, and their cuts will heal more quickly. I think it's because of the enzymes and the chlorophyll, and then they'll wash their eyes out with the juice. And people, so there's got to be something in it.
These simple, natural things. So I also wanted to have you talk a little bit about Tour to Cure, and make sure that the information comes out so our audience knows how to get in touch with you. So I'll start with you, Callie, and I have a little brochure right here, nice brochure. A little bit about that, and we'll go right over to Diane.
Okay. The Tour de Cure is a cycling event. It's the signature event for the American Diabetes Association, and it's a fundraising event, and it attracts lots of different riders. And the riders that live with diabetes wear the Red Rider jersey, and the Red Rider jersey represents anyone living with diabetes or someone that supports someone with diabetes, and it's kind of moving. At every tour you get this jersey, someone presents it to you, and on the back of it it says, "You are the reason why we ride."
And I
It's
think
pretty
we
moving.
might even have a picture of that to put up.
Yes, yes. Those are the Red Riders, and they start the tour of each route. It's 15 miles, 30 miles, 62 miles, and 100 miles. And there's usually about 20, 30 Red Riders, and we hope that there are more because we'd like to get the word out, but because of laws, we can't always reach all the diabetics. And what the tour does is it brings together the diabetes community. And they come together at this particular event, and there's food, there's festivities, there's a band, there's awards, there's a great meal. Usually someone sponsors it and provides terrific food, and there's champions, and a champion is someone who's fundraised a certain amount. And I like to think that people think that it's a reasonable amount when they sign up and register, because it's a drop in the hat. It's $250, and that's easy to, for a day's event, you get a lot. You get a jersey, you get a team, you get people at the finish line cheering and ringing cowbells, and and you have 4 or 5 rest stops that you get lots of different snacks. You get to see the North Shore. It's quite pretty. I joined it back 8 years ago. I went through a period with diabetes where I was in denial and not taking best care of myself, and then when I took charge of that, I decided to do 62 miles. And I used to ride the North Shore up until I was about 30, and then I kind of was like, this diabetes. And so when I did that event, it was great because I was about 8 miles from Gloucester, and I ran into another Red Rider, and he's part of the committee, Steve Dumas, and I'm part of the ADA committee now, which is great because it got me involved. That's the beauty of the Tour de Cure, is that if you're diabetic or you want to be part of a community and teach people, it's a great place to get started, and you get involved in clinical trials and research. So, and you meet other people living with diabetes. And we were 8 miles out, and I said, "You want to ride in with me?" And we were both riding in at the finish, and we went to the arch, and we went through, and it's kind of moving.
It is moving. And I also just want you to let us know about the blue color you're wearing.
Okay, so the blue is it's November 14th is World Diabetes Day, and this is the universal color. And if you ever see that symbol, that's a circle. That's the universal symbol for world diabetes, or the international symbol. And I put this blue streak in to make emphasis. And on Blue Fridays, people wear blue. A friend of mine makes bracelet, and she donated this to me towards diabetes, Rainey's wrap. And so I just trying to spread the message with the...
Well, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. Thank you so much, Callie.
Thank you.
And Diane, anything you want to share?
Oh, sure.
A way to reach you?
Okay. I have a website called enoughnonmyplate.com, and I have a raw food health coaching business. So I teach people how to maintain the Hippocrates lifestyle at home. And so I'll teach you how to grow wheatgrass and sprouts, and how to do some raw living food cuisine, like veggie burgers, nachos, things like that, and desserts. Can't forget the desserts.
Desserts.
Ice
It's a good
cream.
place to stop on the
Ice
show.
cream.
I know
The
it.
chocolate mousse, raw chocolate mousse.
Yeah.
On a sweet note.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Diane
thank
DeGuzman Pyle and Callie Roberts, for being on Get Your Voice Out There. I'm Roberta Chadis, and we hope that you enjoyed this show. We'll see you soon.